Rocket science is easy, but farming is difficult. Now, this is according to Managing Director and Country Head for Nigeria at Olam Agri, Nigeria. Anil Nair, who says Nigeria's food insecurity can be addressed in 4 years if concentrated efforts and the right steps are taken. He sat down for an in-depth conversation on agriculture with Arise business correspondent Roger Zudiri.
All right, Mr. Anil Nair, Managing Director, Country Head for Olam Agri, Nigeria. It's great to see you here at the Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan. Look, I wanted to start off with food security. Nigeria declared a state of emergency for food back in 2023. You've seen a whole lot of issues across much of the continent. It's been said that Africa is blessed with food, so why do we continue to have these security issues? What do you think it is from your vantage point?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's a good place to be, and I think we are at the right topic, food security, which must be discussed and actions must come out of it. So Nigeria declared food security, as you said, or insecurity, you said, but I believe that sometimes we need to look at a little bit deeper, and to address this kind of issues, we need to go back to the basics, right? So we keep hearing about a lot of things happening in the value chain. But if you actually look at the basics and whatever is true for Africa is true for Nigeria as well. I mean, the problems in the sub-Saharan Africa, or the solutions rather, I would say, is the same, right? So Nigeria produces a lot of food. It's not that we are not there. We have a lot of food. We are the largest producers of cassava in the world. We have around 63 million to 65 million tons of cassava that we produce. We have a lot of maize. We have 55 million tons of yam. The only two things which, the one thing which we import, which we don't have production at all, is maybe 50 to 100,000 tons of wheat we produce. There are balance, we consume around 6 million tons of wheat, which is all imported into the country, right? Which is right, which we don't have, we import. And then the problematic commodity when it comes to this landscape is rice. We produce around 8.3 million tons of paddy, which converts to roughly 5 million tons of rice. And we have a consumption of around 8.3 million tons of rice, roughly. So there is a gap there, and at times that is a gap, that is the only commodity that actually creates this insufficiency or insecurity. So whenever the demand is not met, then all that demand which is there gets into the other commodities, and then the price inflation goes up. So that is what is happening, and that is exactly what the government is trying to address now. So there is a government and a private, the industry which is having a panel and which discusses what exactly needs to be done. So we need to address the basics. That is that in Nigeria, if you see, we are on 68 million hectares of arable lands, agricultural lands. Out of that, we have 36 million hectares of arable lands, right? We still have 8 million. Out of that, we don't cultivate 8 million hectares of land. So that means we have 8 million hectares of lands which can be brought into cultivation. But do we need that? In reality, we don't need those lands. Those lands needs to be kept as it is, because with climate change and everything else, we need to, the less amount of cultivation, expansion into lands is better on the theoretical part of it. So where is the problem? The problem is the yields, right? 95% of our food comes from smallholder farmers. And the smallholder farmers, if you look at it in general, are the poorest of the poor people, right? So if you look at it, why it is happening is because their cost of inputs is very high. Their access to market is not there. The training that they need in today's modern world, how to improve on their agriculture, that needs to be imparted. But the basic thing is, how do you increase the yields? Like, for example, just to give you, say, a couple of commodities, one is rice, which is our national crop, as we call it. We have a yield of around 2.3 tons per hectare, roughly, thereabout. We cultivate 3.5 million hectares of land in Nigeria for rice, for paddy. And we get, as I said, 8.2 million tons of paddy out of that, which converts to 4.85 million tons of rice. So we get a yield of 2.3 tons. But the world average yields are 4.6 tons, right? Yeah. So if you increase that yield of the farmer, the cost of his production, his cost of that commodity will be reduced, and hence that can also have a multiplier impact on the overall inflation, right? If you can increase that yields by, say, even a ton or two, we have enough rice or paddy to supply to that demand of that additional 3 million tons of what is coming in. And it's quite doable because Olam Agri has a rice farm in Nasarawa state, which we have been running for the last 12 years. We do 2 crops, 4,500 hectares twice a year, right? Both wet and dry season, where we get close to 5 tons of yield in the wet season. So and we use the same varieties of Faro 44s and other things, right? So those yields are gettable, but a little bit of focus is required. So we work with a lot of outgrowers farmers where we have improved the yields. We have seen that the yields can be improved by just doing the basics, the right inputs, the timely inputs, the training to farmers of how to identify your pests and diseases, what exactly needs to be done. And we have seen the yields double or at least 50-60% improvement in the first year and then from there onwards, right? So basic things if we focus on, I believe the yields can be improved so we can grow vertically rather than going horizontally into newer lands, right? Just to give you a data point is that today if you sit and look at the cost per hectare or the cost of production for a ton of paddy at this 2 tons of yields per hectare, the farmer's cost of production per ton of paddy would be around 290,000 nairas, right? Whereas the millers, over the years, there is a lot of investment that has gone into the rice milling part. The millers have bought that paddy at around 750,000 naira to a ton. So 290 naira per kg to 750 naira per kg, the gap there, the margin if you see, that value is 156%. But now we need to also understand that who is appropriating that margin? The farmer is perhaps not getting that margin, right? The farmer is being squeezed somewhere because he has people who he has to lend money from, borrow money from. There are people who would be lending him inputs because they are smallholder farmers, they are scattered around. There are companies like us, there are companies like UMZA, there are companies like Vaccord and all who do outgrower farmers. If you go and see their operations, they buy directly because they have this tie-up, they are off-takers and these farmers are there and the farmers are making that margin, right? These companies, we all buy at the market prices from them. We provide them with a lot of support. And then you see the prosperity coming into the farming lands and they are encouraged to do more. So if more ecosystem, the government can come in and ensure that, somehow the smallholders are supported. 40% of their input cost, at least minimum, depends from area to area, geography to geography. Minimum 40%, 45% of their input cost are fertilizers. How can we subsidize their fertilizers? And then we also have to see that what is the kind of fertilizer that they're applying, the quality of those fertilizers. Soil testing is important because it's not a straight-jacketed thing that you apply NPK straight away, 5 bags, 10 bags. It's not like that. We need to see what kind of soils are we operating. Does that person needs to use more urea or it is more of phosphorus or more of something else, right? And then how do we also introduce biofertilizers because these kind of chemical fertilizers can be harmful for the soil. So soil health is very important, right? How do we minimize the usage of water? Now let me also give you an example, moving out of rice, give you an example of say maize. Our average yields are what, 1.6 tons to a hectare, whereas world average is 6.2 tons per hectare. And same thing for Africa,
yeah.
Right? Same thing for Africa.
Yeah.
And we produce around 12 million tons of maize, right? 12.5 million tons of maize, out of which 1 million tons roughly is transacted for feeds and other things. The rest of it is consumed. So if we grow our yields of maize, that itself can substitute the rice gap, right? And we should not be obsessed with something that we cannot grow, right? We have yam, we have cassava.
Yeah.
So why can't we? That is what is native to us, and the farmers knows about that. How to produce yam, how to produce cassava for decades, for hundreds of years, right? So let's focus on that. Let's look at the food wastage. A lot of yam, a lot of cassava gets wasted, right? Because cassava is 70%. It's a tuber. It's 70% water. If you don't, the moment you harvest it within 36 hours, if you don't dry them, process them, it turns into a waste, right? Mm-hmm. Look at tomatoes for that example. So we need processing facilities or at least storage and drying facilities at the catchment areas. That needs to be addressed. The storage solution need to be addressed. The harvest losses need to be addressed. So these are not rocket sciences. They are very simple things. But at the same time, they are not something that you can implement and immediately because right. Our holders are small holders, right? And that is how the right system should be. Like I hear some people say that no, it has to be large scale farming. Large scale farming probably to my mind is not the solution because we already have a farming structure which is existing. So how do we build on that? Like if you look at Asia, except US, except the developed world, where it maybe Australia and certain other parts, all the food comes from smallholders. So how do we support smallholders? And smallholders are getting a lot of employment, by the way, right? So look at the mechanization part. So mechanization also ties up into that. Technology ties up into this. Your climate ties up into all this. So if you walk around the paddy production zones, for example, right, you see a lot of yield while the crop is growing at a maturity stage. You see a lot of good crop. And knowing if you're a farmer or even whatever, you see, oh, this is a 5-ton crop, right? Because lush, the panicles are there, the number of grain, and you see the grain filling is quite good. But when that farmer harvests that, he's not able to appropriate that 5 tons. What he gets is probably 2 tons, 1.5 tons, or or probably 3 tons, right? 2.5 tons, whatever, because of lack of mechanization. Like in the entire Africa and Nigeria, same, the mechanization rate is 0.01 HP per hectare, horsepower per hectare. World average is 0.67, right? So we need more mechanization. And that does not mean that we just buy tractors and give it, right? So tractors need to be given. But when you give tractors, you also need to understand that somebody needs to
run them.
Yeah. And then somebody has to be at the backup support for maintaining those tractors. Because if you buy tractors and give it, like we hear that somebody has given 200 tractors to someone or 300 tractors to someone, it will work for 3 months probably or 2 months. After that, what? So how do you maintain them? How do you run them? And it can become an industry in itself, right? It can have a major impact to the economy. You are giving employment, you are giving technical training, imparting, the technicians. So that technical training you're imparting, and probably you can have a trainer programs coming up. The tractor manufacturers are willing to do that, right? So how do we build that ecosystem? Every state, right from the federal government downwards, we have a structure in place. We have a proper structure in place. The farmer, the local governments, the agricultural departments at every level knows your farmers. They know how much area we cultivate. So through that, it can be implemented. Can be made. Every local government or whatever regions, hubs can be made where mechanization can be given. So mechanization itself, in the harvest losses, 25-30% difference it can make. That's a huge difference. And then if you have post-harvest storage facilities, drying facilities, if they can also be built in, grain silos. So you are building not only the capacity of the farmers, improving the yields, by doing so, we are also building a strategic grain reserve wherein the government will have full visibility of what do we have on ground and hence what is the intervention required. See, there would be times when the government might, or you may have to import certain things when a crop failure happens. Once in a blue moon it happens, right? It's agricultural commodities. Instead of panicking, at that point in time, we will have enough database to understand which of the crop has a problem and what solution do we need to take for a short-term, short-gap arrangement, right? So long-term, I believe, and then we bring in the climate-smart solutions, because today what we lack is, or it's an evolving situation, because in the last 3-4 years, we've started seeing from 2019 how the climate is playing, right? And the last 3 years, we've seen that the climate is becoming very erratic. The rainfall that you want on a particular day, like normally we used to have these rains, 20 mm, 25 mm, 30 mm rains coming on a certain period of time. But you will see at that point in time, for 5 days you'll have no rains. And on the 6th day, all that rainfall on one single day and your flash floods coming in. So these are the challenges which you're facing. So everyone is talking about it, but nobody knows exactly what to do with it. So if the rainfall, and we have also seen that the rainfall pattern is slightly, that the climatic window is slightly moved, right? So, but still you don't know whether this year will be exactly like last year or not.
Right.
So the whatever data is available is just for 2 years, 3 years, right? And that is also very erratic. So you can't really plan. So that's a definite challenge that everyone, governments, private sector, everyone you talk about will face. Probably we don't have an answer to that today. But yes, if we can look at developing seeds, but that also is a game. It's a long-term process, right? You develop a
seed quality and all that stuff,
So see, seeds are adapted to certain conditions, right? So you develop a seed, and that seed may or may not survive beyond 2 or 3 years. You may take 7, 8 years, 10 years to develop a particular seed, but they may not survive, because once you put into large-scale trials of farming, then only you realize, because some insect damage will happen, because nature is different. Rocket science is easier, but farming is more difficult because it's all unpredictable, because you're playing with nature. what organism will come in, what kind of a pest will come in, you never know, right? So these are the challenges that we face, but prima facie, I believe that if we look at the basic problems and understand that whatever is impacting the farmers, so we have this tendency of looking only at a certain section. We should not only talk about farmers, because ultimately any decisions that we take or anything, any outcome of that will have an impact on human beings at various levels, be it the farmer, be it the people in the value chain, or even the consumer for that matter. So ultimately we have to look at from all that spectrum and see how can we improve the livelihood of the farmer as well as bring down the cost for the end user, right? I cannot bring in something which is good for the farmer. It's costly, the farmer is making a lot of money or whoever, and then when it reaches the market, the customer is not able to buy it.
Right.
So we have to look at the entire spectrum and see how do we tie up in. But in all this, I believe it is all doable. It is all doable, and probably if we focus, a lot of focus is required on this. A lot of resources are required onto this. If it is done well, we will 2-3 years, right? We can solve this issue, or probably maybe 4 years we can solve this issue. But if the entire machinery goes behind it, it is quite gettable, quite doable, and across the agricultural value chain. Then the second part of that would be to address the protein part, which is the animal feeds.
You mentioned maize.
Not only the feed part. So feed part is like, it again, the cost of your raw material, which is maize, which is soya, that is impacting the cost of the feed to a certain level. So if you improve the capacity or the yields of the farmer, the output of the farmer, that will definitely automatically bring in the prices of the inputs down, right? So, and especially when you don't have a slight shortage of rice or of wheat, those kind of shortages of the imported commodities, or an import intervention when whatever is coming in, if that skews a little bit, then you have a lot of pressure coming on to a maize or to any other commodity, right? That will have a ripple effect. So by having the system that I'm talking about, probably will give the government and the policymakers and the industry a basic information right from the base level, so that you can plan ahead that what is exactly causing that problem,
right?
Rather than scrambling at the last moment and when we have a problem.
To fix this and that, right?
Yeah. So that's where it has to go. But on the animal part, I'm saying is that we consume a lot of meat, but we don't produce enough, right? So then we have to look at the production of that, having cattle ranches or whatever kind of investment is required on that part will also, improve the availability of food from that side. So hand in hand, both things needs to be addressed. So the government has actually livestock. They are concentrating on livestock.
Yeah, they have a new livestock ministry in Nigeria.
So that would probably focus on that.
Yeah.
So I think things have improved from 2023, what you're talking about, till now. This year, food inflation has come down.
Eased up a little bit. Yeah.
It's come down. A lot of stability has come in. Other economic indicators are improving. So I believe that we are looking at the right things now.
Okay.
But these things need to be focused on. We have to go back to the basics.
Yeah. Back to the basics.
Yeah.
Rocket science is easy. Farming is much harder. That's the caption for our YouTube. That was brilliant.
No, you see, if you get the science right, right, your rocket will fly.
Yeah.
But if you get the science right today, tomorrow the nature will come and break it down.
And change it. Yeah.
Change it.
Yeah.
Because we have a large R&D, and I'm saying this out of experience. Because we get these, you have this certain seeds in US and in other parts of the world, which yields 9-10 tons. You go to Egypt, you have a 10-tonner yield, right? You try and bring that in here, it will not adapt to the climatic conditions.
Yeah.
Right, that seed will not. And even if you trial it, you have to try it for 3-4 years in your different dry season, wet season, dry season, wet season, to see, whether it is doing good in these conditions. But the moment you release it to a large scale farm, something goes wrong. 1 year, 2 year, it will work for you. Then third, it will be susceptible to some kind of disease because it is not acclimatized to that situation.
Right.
So that is where it is. So we are also, then research. Most of the research that happens, the researchers do research for themselves.
Right. Not for the wider
Not for
community.
the farmers.
Yeah.
They want to write good papers, theories, and good research always are left behind in a piece of paper. They're never taken it to the farmers who really need it. So I believe in some areas I've seen that what happens is that the research organizations are fronting towards the farming community. So they tell the farmers when to plant, right? So a simple mechanism like radio in a certain area, they say this is the right climatic conditions because we have a weather forecast coming up. So you should all go and plant on such and such date, a particular crop, for example, let me say rice. So the benefit of that is that you have a lot of area which is planted on the same day. So certain pest, disease, and even the quilla birds and other things, they attack at a certain stage of growth, right? So the quilla birds will come and attack when the rice is at a milky stage. They like that once it is mature, they will not attack that. Right. And similarly, there are certain diseases which comes from, say, 5th day of the crop coming up to 15th day of the crop coming up. So if your farm is planted on a certain date and I plant 10 days after you and somebody else plants 10 days after me, so this insect will come and attack that because it will impact at say 5th day, for example, for sake of argument, on that 5th day. And by the time it has eaten up all your crop, my crop is coming up, which will be 5 days, it will come here. Right? But if all of us plant on the same day, what happens is that there's so much of area, it will impact probably 1% of the total crop. By the time it eats up this thing has gone up to 10 days, then it is of no use to this guy. So these kind of things, when they announce on radios and say, this is a timing for you to plant, what symptoms, if you see these symptoms, that means you have this disease. So if the farmer is listening to that and he can see it, yes. And smallholder farmers, like smallholder, why I like smallholder is that there's a saying which says that the shadow of the farmer is the best fertilizer, right? The farmer comes there, he sees, yes, smallholder, he can walk around and see what is happening in his farm. Large scale, you just don't know. You can't walk the length and breadth of that, say, like I have a 4,500 hectares of land, which is like 12 kilometers by 7 kilometers. Manually, it is not possible for me to go and check each and every area and understand what problem this crop has or that crop has. And every parcel of land will have a different growth because of the soil nutrition will vary from place to place. So if the research institutes can actually face the farmers, understand their problems and profess solutions for that, they have very basic, simple things that can be done. Communication part. And we have a lot of technology today, be it handheld apps to understand what the problem of the crop is. And through that itself, solutions can be proposed. AI is doing a wonderful job in these things, but how to make it affordable?
That's the key. Hey, look, this has been a comprehensive rundown of attacking the issues in Nigeria, and you really do show your 25 plus years of experience in this area, and I think Olam Agri is lucky to have you. Thank you so much for the education, Mr. Anil Nair, who of course Managing Director and Country Director, of course, Country Head for Nigeria at Olam Agri. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
Appreciate it.